Welcome to Chatty here at Buxani Counseling Care. I'm Giovanni, this is Katie, Melissa, and Dr. Buxani.
Hi, and we're missing Monique, who has recently joined our exciting team. Hopefully next time we'll have Monique with us, but for today, it's the four of us. I'm going to have Melissa introduce the topic.
Thank you so much. So our topic today is family estrangement, and what that basically is a loss of a relationship that previously existed, right? You had a relationship with your family, and for emotional or physical reasons, that relationship no longer exists.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know, I see a lot of that.
Yeah.
Me too.
Right?
Yeah. This is something.
I mean,
that
our
I've seen a
young
lot of.
adult population,
Yes.
and because we have, a lot of our caseload is young adult, I see it a lot. And one of the reasons, and I'm sure, you all have obviously seen other reasons, but some of the reasons that I've seen is toxic relationships. So, narcissistic parent or a parent with a personality disorder. Obviously, we know the big ones, the abuse and neglect. When kids are subjected to that, by the time they get to adulthood, like, okay, I don't want this. This is too toxic for me. I don't know. What are y'all seeing in terms of reasons, other reasons?
Well, what I'm seeing is that I think when that age group starts attending therapy, they really start doing some self-discovery, and then that kind of like the onion layers come off, and then they start reevaluating everything that they know, basically, right? Their family dynamics, their relationships, and I think that's where we start to see some of like the discomfort that they're feeling. Like, wait, this isn't what I thought it was. And I think that's leading to some stuff because of most time, I should say, and some of the clients that I've been dealing with is that they do the change, but then their parents don't necessarily do the change. Some of them are unwilling, they're incapable, and so that causes a lot of conflict.
Yeah, I agree. No, I think you hit it right on the head with that. Is that there's just like an awareness that I'm seeing within my clients as they're getting older, and I really think that exposure to media and kind of higher levels of education are also contributing to that awareness. That they are seeing the behaviors of their parents as toxic, or they are maybe more in tune with some of those more manipulative behaviors, or borderline abusive behaviors, and they realize that they have the choice, right? Like, as much as we want to say family is blood, blood is thicker than water, family can still be very toxic. And
Absolutely.
and what we all, I'm sure, hear from everybody is that toxic people in our lives are not good for us, and that it's always important to put ourselves first. And I am definitely seeing that a lot with my clients, especially my older teens, and really my 20 somethings, that they're getting into the world, they're in college, they're having these new experiences, they're speaking to different kind of people who are coming from other backgrounds, and they're just seeing that something's not right, or it's not working for them anymore.
And I think what contributes to that is that when we're children, right, we don't really have anything to compare our experiences to, and we also tend to internalize, if something bad is happening around us, we're like, well, is it my fault? What can I do to make it better? And as we become adults, we realize that, wait a second, there's really no excuse for this type of behavior, and how, this is not normal, or it's not okay.
Absolutely.
And so that is kind of, I think, what leads those children into therapy, and then to have those realizations, or either on their own as well.
For sure. And I think what you were talking about too, with the changes that they're experiencing, just because of awareness, or coming through therapy, is that there is conflict as they change, and they recognize that their parents aren't changing. It becomes really frustrating, and it pushes them away even more, to a point where young people are cutting off their parents, or they do have limited contact with them because of how it will affect their own mental health in the long run.
And I there's a rationale to this, and I think it's important for parents to realize that when children do that, to stay in a toxic relationship is bad for people's mental health, and for people's physical health, because ultimately this is going to result in people falling sick, right? So physically and mentally. So of course you you don't want to stay in those relationships, and I feel, more and more parents need to understand that and have an open mind to accepting changes and within themselves and bringing about those changes so that they can have better relationships with their kids.
Right. I think, instead of, maybe just taking it personally, because obviously it is personal, but instead of just taking it as an attack, actually listening to what their adult children are telling them.
Absolutely.
And, trying to be adults with them, right? And have a conversation about it, and, just try to flush it out and, process it together and work together to create change within their relationships, and so that they don't have to cut their parents off, because no matter what age, we can all change, even though it does get a bit harder as we're older, but it's still possible.
Yeah, and I was gonna say that, like, culturally, right, it's really in many cultures not accepted or very taboo to think of just cutting off our parents or cutting off our family members.
Absolutely.
And so for clients that I've worked with, they've had friends maybe tell them that are not a part of their culture, don't understand the dynamic, and it's really hard for them to kind of balance these two ideas of, well, do I cut off my family or my parents or not? And so I think having a really nuanced perspective, like Katie was saying, is like, well, for those clients that don't feel or have their reasons that they cannot do that, how can we help them find
Absolutely
a healthy balance, boundaries, communication that works for them at that time?
Definitely.
Correct.
And I don't think it's necessary that they necessarily cut off their parents. I think there's some ways that we can help them with healthy boundaries, with a sort of communication.
Yes.
Right.
It takes some time, and it's kind of retraining the client, but also how their parents are going to interact with them, right? And that can be frustrating, and it's going to take a lot of trial and error, right? But I don't think that needs to happen. I think that's kind of like the last
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of it depends on then the parents being able to
Be receptive.
be receptive.
Exactly.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because there are children who cut off those relationships from their parents. They experience a lot of abandonment, depression, grief, loss. So it's not.
There's risks
I don't think
to that
yes,
too.
it's never easy. For anybody to do that. So I feel like when it has to be that last resort, because obviously it's hard for the parents, because they experience that grief and the shame and loss. But even for the kids who are taking that decision, it's not easy. It's very painful, because then you have a family event and you're not going. You will sense that abandonment. So it needs to be that last resort, and the idea, of course, is for yes, for the kids for us to work with the children, or I'm saying children, but the young adults, to kind of have those boundaries, and then somewhere family therapy where the parents come in and we can get them to understand the kids' perspectives, right?
I think that's often kind of an avenue to get the parents into therapy, because again, culturally or from their own experiences, they may not be open to that, or they will just haven't thought of that as an option. And so sometimes saying, okay, well, why don't you invite them in for a session and see how that goes? And that can just, even if it's just one session, can open the door to conversations that haven't happened before, and in kind of a safer, more controlled environment. I think as we were talking, one of the things that came to mind that I think many people could relate to, we've talked about maybe domestic abuse or personality disorders or other reasons. But recently we had a really great example of a lot of people going through that, which was because of politics. Right? A lot of divide and misunderstanding and just distancing of families because of value systems, right? And so politics is one example, but even there's many other value systems that play a role in that.
Agreed. And I feel we all see that, right? Because in our, especially our older teens, even our young teens, and the young adults, they think differently, and again, the world is changing, and I feel like we all need to adapt. I mean, Giovanni, you're a parent, I'm a parent. my daughter is 14 and she comes and tells me things and I'm like, okay, breathe. Let's be accepting of this because we have to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not bringing up, and pointing out to the cultural piece. I'm not bringing my child up in India.
Yeah.
I'm not bringing her up in Dubai where I grew up.
Yeah.
So I have to be accepting of change, so that I can have a better relationship with my child.
Right.
Because otherwise, it's going to be fighting all the time,
Mm-hmm.
which is not conducive
Yeah.
at all to any parent-child relationship.
Yeah.
So yes, value systems are different, and I feel we need to acknowledge that value systems are going to be different, and get to that happy place, right? Because it's not also as a parent, that I'm going to give into everything, right? Because there are some cultural values that I want to try to instill in my child. So it's that happy balance that okay, not this, but maybe this is okay.
And I think that's what sometimes the parents struggle with,
Mm-hmm.
is where their child is changing and then the parent feels like, well, like I don't know you anymore, or like you're abandoning all of our traditions.
Yeah. And there's such a I think an internal struggle with the parents for that, because they may, like a lot of the families that I work with that have recently immigrated to the United States, right? They came to this country, they made the choice to come, they want a better life, but then actually physically seeing those changes in their children where they are kind of distancing themselves from the culture and adapting more to the American culture is scary for them. Yeah.
Brings about insecurities. Parents question themselves, hey, oh my gosh, are we doing something wrong? There's so much that goes on. And that's why I feel, family therapy is so important, because getting the parents in, sitting down, having these conversations that are so important in a safe environment where, both parties feel like they are being heard and they can express themselves and kind of reach that happy place, right?
Yeah.
So important. I know a lot of us, or maybe most of us, are doing some sort of family therapy, right? What are your experiences with the families that you girls have worked with?
I think for me, I see the shift when the parents or the extended family, for the most part, 99% of the time, when they come in and they feel heard and they feel validated, that is enough most of the time to start to bridge that gap. Doesn't mean everything changes overnight, but it's enough to say, okay, what everybody in this room has to say is important, so let's hear it. And then that's kind of the first step.
What else? Katie, I know you have seen.
A
you
couple.
have your share.
Yeah, I agree with Melissa, though. I do think that, I've only seen a few here and there together, but what Melissa's saying is that I think it is a great opportunity to, to kind of open those doors for the conversation, and you do see a bit of change, following after. Again, I will be honest, there are the families that they need to be coming more consistently, right? Like it is, there's some maybe more deeper work or more intense work that has to occur than just in more than one session.
Absolutely.
But it does open the door for the conversation, and I think it is an opportunity for everyone to feel validated and heard. And oftentimes I've seen where the parents come in and they hear what their child is saying, or what their adult child is saying, whatever age they are, but that almost sort of like shocks them a little bit into like, what am I doing? Or I need to be listening more.
Right.
Maybe I haven't been like listening. I've been like listening to respond instead of just listening.
Right.
There's just something about taking each person out of their regular environment and putting them in a room together.
Yes, absolutely.
And it just kind of, wakes us up a little bit.
Right. But I think what you said, Katie, I think that is so important, because you're right. We don't see a lot of families coming in. And I know that sometimes it's pulling teeth, getting the parents to come in, even if it is for a session or two. And we see more of a resistance. Sometimes we will see that resistance from the young adult or the teen, and they're like, no, I don't want my parent to come in because I don't think they'll understand. But a lot of times that resistance is actually from the parents. When the teen is saying, yes, okay, I am ready for this, and the parents don't come in, or they don't come in consistently. So I feel if the family unit realizes that it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to go, to that last resort of, okay, I'm cutting off the relationship, because that is really what will happen unless things are fixed.
Right.
So to make that effort to contact therapists, to make sure that they're doing family therapy, I think that's key to making sure that families are staying intact.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's the goal.
For sure.
Perfect. Yeah. Right. Thank you, girls. I think this was such an important topic, and I'm so glad we finally got to discuss it. I'm hoping that this will encourage more families to actually reach out and get help before that final step of breaking off relationships. Everybody knows how to reach us, and Melissa, you can tell those who don't.
Yes, please like, follow, and share if you like what we have to say. And if you have any topics that you'd like for us to cover, please leave that in the comments, and we would love to cover those topics. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.